I'm Doris Waddell, Edmonds, and I grew up in Rectortown and then attended school here in Marshall, Virginia. Spent a lot of my teenage years here in Marshall. Later on in life, I found out that my grandfather, Andrew Waddell, drove the very first school bus in the 1920s. And I have a picture, and there's a picture at the Fauquier Library of the very first school bus driven by my grandfather, Andrew Waddell, and it looks really weird. Looks like a cattle bus to me, but anyway, I understand that he also drove the area residents on church retreats and tent meetings all over Fauquier County. So there's some history there with the first school bus. I also attended Marshall High School with my sister Marilyn, who was a couple years ahead of me, and my twin brothers, James and Donald, who ended up being Donald and Duck as they went into high school. And I have lots of tales about my brothers in high school. Only one I have about my sister. The year she was homecoming queen for the football, she said to me, she kind of teased me, she says, "It's too bad that you didn't get to be princess of the freshman class." So I go back to school the next day, and guess who was homecoming queen for the freshman class? So we had a little rival going, as well as my brothers. And I have to tell you a funny story about my brothers. It was one Halloween, and I'm sure anybody that lives in Marshall's already heard about this story at Marshall High School. They decided to go out on a farm and get somebody's cow, take that cow and put it in the auditorium at the Marshall High School. And that cow stayed in the auditorium all night in the high school. So the next morning, my brothers weren't home. So I said to my mom, "Where are my brothers?" And she says, "Well, they spent the night in jail because your father would not go get them out of jail. He decided if they did something as bad as putting a cow in the school auditorium, he wasn't going to get them out of jail. He was going to let them see what it was like." So that was one of the stories about my brothers. But if you talk to anybody that went to Marshall High School, the twins got together a lot and did a lot of things. I think they were the only set of twins around at that time, so I did not know of any other twins in Marshall High School while I was growing up. But I also wanted to say that I found out that I was fourth generation. John Gott tells me I'm fifth generation, told me I'm fifth generation, but my grandparents came from Pennsylvania, and they were chinchilla raisers. They did chinchilla farms up in Pennsylvania. So when they got here in Virginia, my grandfather had a blacksmith shop over in Rectortown. A lot of people used, that was the only blacksmith shop around that they used. My dad I'll go back to growing up, and my dad was a TV repairman, and a lot of people didn't realize, but there was a variety store on Main Street here in Marshall. It was Miss Bue's store. Miss Bue had everything. Anything you wanted to buy, you could go to Miss Bue's store and buy. A lot of my Christmas gifts came from Mrs. Bue's store, because I remember my dad going to Miss Bue's when he got paid on Friday night. He'd go and he'd pick up something for my sister and I. So we have things that were bought at Miss Bue's variety store. After he worked there as a TV repairman, he went to Marshall Hardware, which is directly across the street from where the Bue's variety store is, where I can't even think of the name of the store now, the pastry store that has a shop in Warrenton and one in Marshall, and has the nice pies. That they're here in Marshall now, and that was what the Bue's store used to be. And going ahead and talking about it as I grew up, after I graduated from high school, my parents couldn't afford to go to college, but I did immediately go to work for the government. And years later, after 10.5 years, I went to work for IBM. Had quite a lot of experiences for a country girl that grew up here in Marshall. And But in 1959, I married my sweetheart, my best friend, Wayne, and we were married here in Marshall Methodist Church. And that Marshall Methodist Church, really the interior of that church has not changed that much. And if you really want to see a rustic church, you should go by and see that church. And there was a lot of projects that went on in that church that I was involved in the Marshall community. And I taught third grade Sunday school class for 33 years in the Marshall Methodist Church. And Connie Story, who is now the assistant principal at Fauquier High School, was one of my third grade students at the Marshall Methodist Church. I'm real proud of her. She's real proud of me. She calls me her Sunday school teacher, even after all these years. So it's fun knowing that you have a connection in a small town and that people will remember you from years to come. But I was also instrumental in the Marshall Methodist Church in doing the stained glass windows in our church. And it would be a great trip for you to come by the church and look at the windows. All of the windows have a specific thought in mind, and they were all given by people in the community. And David and Pauline Glasscock wanted to do a window in our church. They were local merchants here in Marshall. They did one, and all they wanted was the picture or a picture of Jesus. And they wanted that, and they wanted the sunlight behind them. So we picked the perfect window, because on Sunday morning that light comes right through that window behind Jesus. There's other windows in that church as well. Paul and Joan Fries did a window, and the choir has a window. The Umbles have a window in memory of their daughter, and there is just a Marshall window there. So if you ever have any time, it would be a great asset for you to come by and see what the community's done in that church. I was also instrumental in helping the Baptist church get started on their stained glass windows. I did not do the meaning for the windows, but I helped them design the windows. And they have some beautiful windows in the Baptist church as well. I'm trying to think of a lot of the other things that I was involved in the community, and spent a lot of time at the Marshall Ruritan Club trying to get that started. Actually, my husband and I were on the first board that started to build that community fellowship place. We helped put the first bricks in there and the first stones on the fireplace. We carried them in, physically carried them in. So there's a lot of history in Marshall, and a lot of which after 84, 83 years I've been involved in. I can't think of anything that I would go back and change for all the years that I lived here in Marshall, and spent many a day at the ball fields and Marshall Middle School, and also at Claude Thompson Elementary School. Sold many a hot dog to a parent to keep the clubs going in the area. Did a lot of fundraising in Marshall to keep things going, and feel proud of our little community, and I wouldn't have it any other way.